What is up, denizens of the interwebs? It's Chats here, coming at you with another video. And this time, we're talking about Nintendo versus Palworld in the absolute ludicrous decision for Nintendo to go ahead and sue Palworld under patent infringement. So, like, subscribe, and hop in, losers. We're breaking this one down. So this whole situation started off with Nintendo going ahead and going on a suing spree, where first they had sued a Chinese company that had made a Pokemon clone called Pocket Monsters Reissue. Not even the name is being vague enough to really think that they were not going to get sued, given the fact that Nintendo is notoriously litigious, especially where Pokemon or Mario are concerned. According to this article, Nintendo had sued for a total of $72 million in damages, given the fact that Pocket Monster Reissue was making $42 million a year, which is insane to think about that kind of number. However, they were only awarded a $15 million payout. So after getting off of that high of winning that lawsuit, I guess it's not overly surprising that they would go and seize the next big opportunity at a lawsuit, which of course is against Palworld, which launched in January and has received a massive amount of accolades. However, it also had a lot of Pokemon fanboys crying on Twitter, claiming that it was too similar and that they were infringing on Nintendo's property rights. Why these people were so determined to try and tear down Palworld for doing something unique and not infringing on Pokemon at all is absolutely beyond me. Especially when we now know for certain that Nintendo isn't suing based on PAL designs. They're suing for patent infringement. And of course, the problem is the patent isn't announced. No one knows what patent they violated, so it's all speculation up to this point. And that's especially covered in this article from Bounding Into the Comics by Spencer Bakuli, which states that in a statement made by Nintendo will continue to take necessary actions against any infringement of its intellectual property, including the Nintendo brand itself, to protect the intellectual properties it has worked hard to establish over the years. Basically, that's just lawyer speak for what's mine is mine and it's not yours, and it's mine, it's going to stay mine. It's basically a way to ensure that in the future, someone can't try and take your property from you or justify the fact that the property should be used as public domain because you aren't protecting your copyright. And this article makes sure to very specifically point out that it is not a concern of copyright infringement. It is explicitly a lawsuit about patent infringement. But what patent could it be? Well, not even the developers of Palworld know, which is revealed in this other Bounding Into the Comics article, also written by Spencer Bakuli. Palworld does respond to a lawsuit from Nintendo and the Pokemon Company. At this moment, we are unaware of the specific patents we are accused of infringing upon. And that is a direct statement from Pocket Pair. The company has not been made aware of the specific patents. They have no idea what's wrong. All anyone aside from Nintendo's lawyers know is that the Pokemon brand co-owners have submitted an appeal to the Tokyo District Court which seeks an injunction against the infringement and compensation for damages on the grounds that Palworld, a game developed and released by the defendant, infringes multiple patent rights. Now, one thing I'm not understanding, how this counts as damages against Pokemon. They're not saying, hey, look, you can steal Pokemon, because there aren't any Pokemon in this. There are some that look a little too similar, I will admit, but most of them look nothing like Pokemon. They're very clearly distinguishable as Fakemons. And then, of course, this idea that it's cost them money, well, this is a completely different style game. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet sold excellently. As far as I'm aware, Nintendo hasn't had a release since they released Scarlet and Violet last year, meaning that there are no games that Palworld would be logically stopping the sales of. In a statement from Pocket Pair, they have received notice of this lawsuit and will begin the appropriate legal proceedings and investigations into the claims of patent infringement. They were conversely unaware of the specific patents we are accused of infringing upon, and we have not been notified of such detail. Then continues, it is truly unfortunate that we will be forced to allocate significant time to matters unrelated to game development due to this lawsuit. The best that we have is mere speculation, and a whole lot of people seem to think that it has something to do with the capture mechanic. Either the notion of a monster capturing game, though that wouldn't make sense because there's a lot of monster capture games, or maybe it has something to do with specifically capturing the monster in a circular object. While I'm not aware of any other games that you specifically capture monsters in circular objects, one could argue that, say, Bakugan might be a violation of that, because their monsters are circular objects. It's completely questionable whether or not that is even such a thing that could hold up, because the Palsphere is very different from a Pokeball. Their designs are completely different, their opening and capture mechanics are completely different, and one of them displays a lot of information, while the other one gives you almost no information. But that leads me over to this article from IGN, where they think that they might have found the patent that is being infringed upon and is the focus of this lawsuit. And it seems to have something to do with the catching mechanic. Also, this article shows these two, a PAL versus a Pokemon, and this is the only PAL. Of all the PALs, this is the only one I think is too close to a Pokemon. Now, I do like this PAL, I enjoyed writing him, but I do agree that he's a little bit too close to a Luxray. So here we are actually looking at the patent that seems to be infringed upon, with the patent stating aiming a capture item, Pokeball, at a character placed on the field, Pokemon, releasing the capture item in a direction determined by player input, judgment of whether capturing is successful or not upon contact between the capture item and Pokemon, and changing the Pokemon status to owned by the player. When capturing is successful, in addition to the patent also covers the mechanics of having capture probability displayed to the player, regardless of whether it uses colors, graphics, or numbers. Pokemon doesn't display capture probability. They give you some hints that might indicate some things about capture probability, such as Pokemon Go's colors around the sphere when you throw the Pokeball to risk telling you how hard it might be, or in the base games where it shows you health mechanic. But the health mechanic I don't think is entirely for capture, because otherwise the color mechanic wouldn't apply to your Pokemon as well. That mechanic seems to be incidentally applied to the idea of catching instead of actually being aimed at the capturing mechanic, since the capturing mechanic seems to scale off a percentage of max health remaining. And while Palworld does use percentage max health as well as the capture mechanic, a lot of games do that, such as Ark, where the more beat up an animal it is, the easier it is for them to tame, with many animals having to be straight up knocked out in order to tame them. And this graphic, I assume, is just the patent. I think this is supposed to be the Nintendo Switch throwable ball controller, which you gesture at the TV, which I assume this is supposed to be the TV, or that's the player character throwing the ball. Though I could be mistaken on what this is. This could also just be a demonstration of the character throwing the ball, and this is just a close-up of the character's hand. But either way, throwing things to capture creatures is not a Pokemon-limited mechanic either. I mean, have you heard of nets or bolas? They do the same thing. And bolas are, well, it's just 2 balls on a string instead of 1. And I'm going to be completely honest, I really don't think Nintendo has any grounds to stand on in concern to this lawsuit. And I really don't understand why they're suing them in the first place. Especially because of what this article from The Gamer points out. And I hate that I'm giving The Gamer any kind of props, but they are being a little bit honest here. In this article, how is Palworld different from other clones, written by James Troughton. Now, he doesn't really go into talking about the different designs or anything like that. Here they're talking about the patent infringement that might be there, with the throwing mechanic, stats mechanic, all of the mechanics that they might be violating according to Nintendo, which of course, this is all speculation still, because Nintendo has not announced what the patent infringement is. Now, I also have to give them credit here. They specifically say that Souls-like, Doom clones, roguelikes, Metroidvanias, copying is how gaming grows. I'm going to push back just a little bit. It's not copying, it's inspiration. The gaming industry doesn't grow by duplicating. The gaming industry grows by taking that and improving upon it. Palworld might have taken some of the ideas from Pokemon, but they're all improved by, and they all fit into that 25% different that is required to avoid copyright infringement. This article also specifies that it is significantly closer to Ark Survival Evolved than Pokemon, which is what I've been saying since the beginning. Palworld doesn't play like a Pokemon game. It doesn't look like a Pokemon game. It doesn't feel like a Pokemon game. You want to claim that they infringed upon Tears of the Kingdom's gliding mechanic, or the stamina wheel, or whatever else? Sure, but the capturing mechanic is by far the weakest argument that you could even make for copying arguments. This article also mentions that there are countless Pokemon clones, and there is also one thing that this person doesn't seem to get. They claimed that there have been a lot of Pokemon-like games, from Temtem to Noxamon to the enormously popular Digimon. One thing this author seems to forget to mention is Digimon came first. If you're going to make this argument that Palworld is infringing upon Pokemon, then first Pokemon has to admit that they have been infringing on Digimon since day one. So with all that being said, I don't understand Nintendo's choice here. Yeah, they could sue, and they might even win, and they might shut down Palworld, but to what end? What is the goal of shutting down Palworld? Clearly, they aren't actively harming Pokemon sales, because people buy Pokemon games every year. I have every single Pokemon game. Just the other week, I found a resale of Pokemon Ultra Sun, and I bought it, even though I'm not a huge fan of Alola. It's still awesome to own that game, and I buy them all. If I find a Pokemon game that's within my price range, I buy it, just on the spot, because of how important Pokemon is. Most of the Pokemon fans, Pokemon is an incredibly important part to their identity. It is something that is incredibly meaningful, and we even have scientific studies to show that people who love Pokemon have a small region in their brain that is altered explicitly for Pokemon recognition. Here's an article that actually references the study that proves it, and I'll have that pinned down in my comments below just so you can read that if you're interested. Because it is really cool how just by playing Pokemon for a couple of years, the brain completely reformats to use a vestigial part of the brain that hasn't been used for centuries for something completely new like identifying Pokemon. So given how dedicated Pokemon fans are to the franchise, I really don't see how this is an infringement on their rights. We're still going to go out and buy all the Pokemon games. I'm still going to buy Pokemon Legends Z when it comes out. I'm still going to buy Gen 10 when that comes out. I'm going to buy every Pokemon game that comes out unless Nintendo gives me a reason not to buy. And I have to say, by suing Palworld, you are actually giving me a reason not to buy, because it shows that you are operating in bad faith, and it shows you are operating without any integrity or honor, and it just shows that you're petty, and I don't want to support a company whose values are so egregiously out of scale with mine. Because for most people, we're going to play both Palworld and Pokemon. I don't currently own Palworld because I was playing it through Game Pass, and I got rid of my Game Pass because I just wasn't using enough to justify the $10 price tag, but I have been meaning to buy it again. Maybe I'll get it again and just start playing it just out of protest of them trying to claim that it's infringing, because it's not. I'm still going to buy Pokemon, I'm still going to play Pokemon, I'm still going to collect Pokemon. I have several Pokemon cards in my desk right now that I recently bought. So Palworld isn't stopping me from buying Pokemon cards. Palworld isn't going to stop me from playing Pokemon, and I don't see it stopping anyone from paying or playing Pokemon. The real issue that Nintendo should be asking themselves is, why are people so drawn to these other games? What am I doing wrong? They should be looking at it as a chance to grow and adjust their market strategy so that they can be better suited for the general population and the changing gaming scene. And I don't mean by appealing to the modern audience like they did in Pokemon Go. I would just love to know how that affected the player numbers when they changed the avatar appearances in Pokemon Go, because I'm willing to bet a whole lot of people, myself included, significantly reduced their player time because of it, because of the bad taste it left in our mouths. And I have another solution for Pokemon Company. How about you don't sue these people? How about you do what a lot of other companies have done, and is a much smarter idea? You offer them a job. Why don't you reach out to Pocket Pair and be like, hey, Pocket Pair, we see what you did with Palworld. We see that it was hugely successful. Can you make us that? Can you take our Pokemon brand and create something like Palworld that appeals to the Pokemon audience, that is like Palworld, an open world sandbox game where you get to capture them? Obviously, no guns, no capturing players. Put in some NPCs who battle you, and really go into the Pokemon theme while maintaining the Palworld style. That would have been a much smarter idea. Why not reach out to the people who made Pocket Monsters Reignited and figure out what they're doing that's getting them $42 million a year in revenue? Why don't you see what they're doing? Why don't you bring them on to work on your game? Maybe they could just help you improve Nintendo. And I guarantee you, you would not only earn significantly more revenue because of the games they're making for you, but you would skyrocket the goodwill that players have with you as a company, and it would ultimately just be better for everyone. The gamers would improve, all of these up-and-coming new developers will get to improve, and your company will get to improve. And so many more people will be willing to engage with Nintendo as a company if they were to do that. Because guess what? Doing things like this in bad faith, doing things like this just because you can, or you're afraid of losing your copyright or something, when it's clearly not in violation of your copyright, all it does is it leaves a bad taste in people's mouths, and it makes them not want to support you anymore. That is one of the only things that could get me to stop supporting Nintendo, is if they continue to do this overly litigious and overly controlling strategy. It's not pro-consumer, it's not pro-gamer, and it's not pro-development. And it just doesn't mesh well with what players want and what the company wants. So hopefully, Palworld is safe. Hopefully, Nintendo learns from their lessons. And let me know if you think Nintendo has even a semblance of a case down below in the comments. And thanks for coming along.